Finally, 3 big news updates dropped today on Cities Skylines II, including this new trailer for the first paid expansion, the Beachfront DLC, as well as some important news about modding and the next patch, and all of it is dropping within a week. So, sit back and relax, and with time cards below, let me take you through today's news for Cities Skylines II, starting with Beach Properties, the paid DLC specializing in residential buildings that kiss the water's edge, Sunshine City and Mediterranean inspired, for both the North American and European biomes, of course. They say in the trailer, as we're about to see, that the residential zone will contain 30 North American buildings and, of course, 30 for the Europeans, as well as 6 signature buildings, though the detail around that is a little bit more complicated. As well as those palm trees, of course, this DLC is dropping on the 25th of March, and it will or is included inside of that Ultimate Edition as well. Oh, and of course, there's a radio pack if you still happen to have the radio turned on. Delving into a bit of the detail, though, the developers update that came along with it from a different voice this week on the Paradox forums. Basically, they say what we've just talked about. Bring your city to life, your city's waterfronts, they say, and we'll return to waterfronts in a moment too. With beach properties, the waterfront zone is a new residential zoning option dedicated to waterfront buildings, allowing us to redefine our city's coastline. And this kind of divergence between areas in a city, for me anyway, is most welcome. Second feature of the DLC are the beach properties themselves. Each theme, they say, adds growable residential buildings waiting to populate the new waterfront zone, from luxurious mansions to charming beachside cottages. And finally, those signature buildings, tailored to fit into European or North American architectural themes. These signature buildings are crafted to highlight the city's beachfront. That's the PR spin for it anyway. Looking into the detail, and things get a little bit interesting. So they say that the Beachfront Properties DLC features 70 new assets in total, including the 30 North American and 30 European residential buildings that we talked about earlier in the trailer. However, an important note here, it's 10 buildings per category, 30 assets within each. So it's actually 10 North American residential buildings with 3 different levels to them. And the same applies to the Europeans. The signature buildings stay the same, and finally, the final 4 assets to round out the pack are 4 new trees. New trees are welcome, don't get me wrong. It just something about it seems kinda funny. And I can't quite pin it down. Maybe I'm alone on that. I don't know. We'll move swiftly along. Finally, though, just to note that the beachfront properties are available, as I noted, as part of the expansion pass Waterfronts, which will be included in the Ultimate Edition. The expansion pass journey, they say, has, quote, begun a bit later than we set out for during the fall. Here is an updated roadmap, end quote. And if we take a look at that updated roadmap, we see that, of course, the beachfront properties and a deluxe relax station now have a release date, the 25th of March. And the same goes for everything that we'll be talking about in this video, well, namely the patch update. Quarter 2 2024 sees modern architecture, urban promenades, nothing changes there. The big change is for bridges and ports, assuming that this completes the expansion pass waterfronts, because quite important alongside the properties to probably have some development of the beach itself, or indeed the waterfronts. Now, bridges and ports has sadly been delayed by 2 quarters, roughly, of course, 6 months. Initially pinned for release, or at least in the last time they updated the roadmap in quarter 2, it has now shifted to quarter 4. And that concludes the update on the beachfront properties, and more broadly on Cities Skylines II's DLC roadmap. Now let's turn to modding, where again, it's another piece of great news. Now, of course, if you're a regular viewer, you'll know that it comes late. Cities Skylines II's launch has been disappointing, to say the least. But I also think that we should celebrate the successes where we find them, and modding sees another success point today. Along with the Beach Properties Pack, the first wave of Cities Skylines II modding will be available. The beta release of modding will initially support map and code mods, and they go into a little bit more detail about this too. The map editor will let us make maps using the existing terraforming tools that we're used to, importing height maps to create highly accurate depictions of hometowns, for example, and uploading creations to Paradox Mods. That's, of course, their bespoke modding platform, stepping away from the Steam Workshop for Cities 2. And the code tools will allow you to show off your coding skills if you have any. And finally, here they stress that these updates, they're still working on it. They'll be rolling out before the 1.0 release of modding. And finally, that Paradox Mods will be open for all of us to upload our creations and download map and code mod creations, at least for the time being. And that rounds out the modding update. Fairly quick and good news. We're seeing the first tranche in beta of modding officially in Cities Skylines II. Now on to the final piece of good news, and I must say, and sticking with the theme of this week's update, it is succinctly written, largely getting to the point and giving us some good detail, updates and fixes. Along with the Beach Properties DLC, there will also be a substantial amount, they say, of performance updates and general fixes and improvements. Quote, "We hope to see much improvement to performance, especially on lower-end spec computers," end quote. That will be great news to many, because of course, nothing that we've discussed means anything if fundamentally the game isn't working. It needs to perform, and it should be at least relatively free of bugs, right? Good news there. Of course, we'll have to wait and test it. They say that the week will also release not one, not two, but 3 developer diaries on the topic of modding, first covering Paradox Mods, the platform, then the map editor, and finally code modding itself. I'm not sure if I'll cover all of these. I suspect it might be better to sort of merge them into one and surmise them, but let me know what you want to see, and I can probably cater to that. Finally, Beach Properties, the map editor, code mod tools, and Paradox Mods are washing up on our shores on the 25th of March 2024. Just 7 days away at the time of recording this video. Now, onto my 2 cents. I think today was a big news update. Finally, some real news, tangible news, with dates and targets and actual changes to Cities Skylines 2, instead of a lot of kind of PR fluff with not a lot of substance behind it, and that is great to see. Again, credit where credit is due. Has it come late? Absolutely it has, and of course, more delays were also signaled today. On the bad news front, we know that we won't be seeing the DLC now releasing, 6 months later? And that will be unfortunate, of course, if you're looking forward to building proper waterfronts in Cities Skylines 2. More broadly though, the initial release, the first tranche of modding, which seems to be, and hopefully is in a very playable and usable state alongside Paradox Mods, and a patch update to fix performance. All of it rolling out on March 25th. I think, on balance, that's pretty good news for Cities 2. Things still need to live up to their expectations though, so let's not count our chickens before they've hatched. Indeed, the patch must fix performance, and hopefully the modding will be a relatively seamless, if not beta launch. Thank you for joining me. Sounds like it's going to be an interesting time for Cities Skylines 2. You might hear more of me while they feed us some information about modding, definitely when the patch drops. I'll see you next time.